Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Hello, I'm so glad you joined us. Whether you're new to the show or an old friend, if you want to find the latest knowledge from today's leading experts to support your evolutionary process, you've come to the right place. This is Mission Evolution, and I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour will consider evolution and chronic fatigue. Personal evolution, while very rewarding, is an energy-expensive process. Yet, our current lifestyles and the demands we face on a daily basis have us depleted and exhausted. Many are finding they lack the energy necessary for simple day to day functioning, much less evolution. How can we move beyond debilitating fatigue to reclaim our lives and evolve into our potential? With us this hour to examine that very dilemma is Dr. Evan H. Hirsch, aka the EnergyMD. Dr. Hirsch is a world renowned energy expert, best selling author, and professional speaker. He is the center of EnergyMD Method, the science backed and clinically proven 4-step process to increase energy naturally. Dr. Hirsch has helped thousands of people around the world increase their energy and happiness. His website, energyforleaders.com. Dr. Hirsch, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Gwilda, thanks so much for having me on.
It's a real pleasure. So, when you first started in your medical training, what was your focus? What did you train in?
I started in family practice.
Oh, okay. And then how did you get drawn into energy?
Well, I had always been really interested in things that were more natural. I did my first integrative training in clinical hypnosis when I was in medical school. And then I was board certified in holistic medicine before I exited my residency program. And at that point, I had already done trainings in acupuncture and in yoga teaching. So I had always kind of looked outside of the conventional paradigm. But it wasn't until I met my wife and we fell in love as I was starting my residency in 2004. And then 3 months later, she couldn't get out of bed.
Oh
And
my.
she still was able to run a business and she had several employees. But unfortunately, her energy waned and waxed and waned for about 3 years until at that point, she was about 80% better. Then a few years later, I ended up with chronic fatigue and it lasted 5 years. And it just about destroyed my life, destroyed my business, destroyed my marriage, destroyed my relationship with my new child. And it was finally when I was napping underneath my desk for the 1000th day in a row when I said, enough is enough. I was already practicing functional medicine at that time. And I knew that if I could find all of the causes of my fatigue, that I could get over it, but I just hadn't applied it to myself. And I prioritized myself, started taking better care of myself. And I found all of the causes that I could possibly find and tested myself for them, treated myself. And then I was able to resolve my fatigue. And then I wrote a book about it. And now I've helped thousands of people resolve their fatigue and take their energy to the next level so they can achieve their potential in life and have more fun doing it.
Sounds like the hero's journey. You have to go through Hades yourself to help other people on the way through.
Absolutely.
So, how many people are impacted by chronic fatigue in the States here?
So the numbers are really astounding, especially now with the new pandemic virus and what we're seeing, otherwise known as long haulers, where a lot of people they acquire, some sort of virus or other illness, and then it pushes them into chronic fatigue. And so the stats are really closer to, I mean, the if you look at the Centers for Disease Control, you're looking at probably about 5% of the US population, but that is grossly underdiagnosed. It is really closer to more like 10%, or about 30 million people in the US. According to one study just a couple of years ago by the National Security Council, about 67% of people in the workforce, so 109 million people, report some significant fatigue that causes them to fall asleep at work at certain points.
So, we all get tired,
Mhm.
but it seems kind of challenging because this is kind of a nebulous sort of thing. How do you diagnose chronic fatigue versus just overworked and tired?
That's a great question because a lot of people are pushing through. And it really runs the gamut. There can be, really severe fatigue where you can't get out of bed, or it can be the person who is relying on coffee, caffeine, energy drinks in order to be able to take their energy to where they need to in order to function throughout the day. So it really runs the gamut. But essentially, if you have a tiredness that's not relieved by rest, and you wake up every day and you're tired, it's a problem. And the body is yelling at you that there is a problem and you need to pay attention. Otherwise, you're going to have diseases of longevity or other issues that may happen because the causes of fatigue are also the causes of heart attack, heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, and autoimmunity.
My goodness. So that would include EMS, arthritis, your autoimmune stuff?
Absolutely.
Phew. So is it often mistaken for something else?
Absolutely. Well, and oftentimes when people have fatigue, they don't just have fatigue. They have other symptoms as well. So sometimes somebody will be diagnosed with plantar fasciitis, which is a pain on the bottom of the feet, and they also have fatigue. Or they're diagnosed with spontaneous sweating, or they have anxiety or sleep problems, and then they often have fatigue. So fatigue is, when we take people through our program and we're ascertaining which causes they have, we say, which symptoms do you have besides fatigue? Because fatigue is really non-specific.
So you speak of energy management. What do you mean by that?
So energy management really has to do with the fact on how you're managing your energy throughout the day. And so some of that, the way that I like to think about it is, let's say you've got a number of marbles. You've got 10 marbles in a jar, and every time you do something that requires energy, you're pulling a marble out of the jar. Now you only have a certain number of marbles in that jar. So when you've pulled all 10 of them out, it's time to take a nap. So it really depends for the individual who is having some energy issues and they're crashing throughout the day, typically around 3 o'clock. That's the most common time to crash. Then they have an energy management issue and they really need to be more mindful. Sometimes this is called pacing. It doesn't fix the problem, but it is kind of a natural progression where people understand, hey, if I want to be able to do this later on in the day, I can't be expending myself in this way. Or they find that they can only exercise for, let's say, 30 minutes a day, because if they go beyond 30 minutes, then all of a sudden their energy is going to be worse throughout the day. And so that's a sure sign that something needs to be done, but that's an energy mismanagement issue.
Well, it seems like most of us, when we hit that slump at 3 o'clock, grab another cup of coffee or an energy drink. I mean, our society really values pushing through and accomplishing and doesn't really support self care. Do you see this as part of the problem?
Yeah, it's a huge part of the problem. It's something that I've struggled with for years. Perfectionistic tendencies and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. These are definitely some adages that we have and that we see, some traits that we see that we're taught at an early age. When you go to school, you have to get there at a certain time. If you're not, you're tardy and you get detention potentially, right? There's lots of consequences for not being perfect in society. And unfortunately, it's really challenging for the human. When we're looking at these different causes, we're going to be talking about the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and the physical. Right. And so if we have the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual that is weighing us down, we're going to have a lot less success when we start to go after all these different physical causes.
So, when you're saying if we have the mental, emotional, and spiritual weighing us down, what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, the thoughts that we think, the feelings that we feel, the experiences that we've had, our relationship to all of those things, and then whether we're aligned with our true path.
Okay, I think we're about out of time in this segment, but help me with true path. What do you mean by
Well,
that?
that's more of the spiritual alignment. You know, if somebody knows that they're not supposed to be working in a particular job, if they know that they're not supposed to be with a particular partner, if they're not living their authentic true self, that can also be stressful on the human body and decrease their chance for living their most authentic life.
So, do we find our authenticity by following our joy?
Absolutely, that's definitely one of the ways to do it.
So, anytime that we're doing something we really dislike or find we dislike what we're doing, should that throw up a red flag for us?
Definitely, and the way that I talk about it is more about what are the sensations in the body. Are these sensations that are pleasurable or are they painful? And it doesn't mean run in the opposite direction. It means stop and listen.
Stop and listen to your body. What a concept. Haven't most of us, and we are about out of time here, but haven't most of us really stopped listening to our body? I mean, some of us never visit the thing.
Absolutely. There's definitely a detachment between mind and body and something that we need to connect more into.
Well, we'll have to look into the connection of mind and body, which I think is very important, on the other side of a commercial break. Dr. Hirsch and I will return shortly, so don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Hello again. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. With us this hour discussing chronic fatigue is Dr. Evan H. Hirsch. His website, energyforleaders.com. Dr. Hirsch, we were just getting into how anymore people aren't in their bodies that much, certainly not paying attention to them. What are the ramifications of that, and how can we move beyond it?
So the disconnect between mind and body does not allow the individual to understand what's actually happening in their body. I was definitely a victim of this, where we accommodate as humans. We're constantly accommodating to our new environment, but we get to a point where we're pushing through our day. We're surviving on caffeine. We're not enjoying our lives, and we wonder, how did we get here? And so it's that lack of consciousness where if we were actually connected to our body, we'd be able to feel the sensations along the way. We'd be able to have that innate wisdom that we see in our pets and our animals, right? To be able to move away from danger, move more towards joy and towards living our most authentic life.
It seems like our society and the way we've been brought up, as we were speaking earlier, is really diametrically opposed to this. Have you any suggestions on how a person can balance the demands of our world with the demands of our body and our well-being?
Absolutely. And it's with increasing emotional intelligence and with increasing mindset resilience. And so those are two things that we focus on a lot in our program besides the physical. So we have some trauma coaches on staff that practice something called NARM, neuro affective relational model for trauma, where they talk about noticing in the body as a superpower, right? So noticing the sensations that are happening in the body.
So, would you go back at those two terms? Would you mind defining them for us so we're on the same page?
The NARM.
No, before that.
Oh, so I said emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And so this is being in touch with your feelings and the sensations in your body, because you will be guided correctly by sensations in your body. So this is part of the reason also why people don't know when they're not feeling well. It oftentimes takes a lot because they're not in tune and they're not recognizing the subtle changes. So that's the first thing in terms of emotional intelligence, understanding the sensations that you're experiencing or paying closer attention to them so that they can better inform you and your decisions in life. And the second thing is mindset resilience. So this is being able to exist in today's society while having a robust mindset. Because a lot of the challenges that we see is that there's lots of input from society, from news sources, from conversations with friends and loved ones, whomever, that can lead you to a more negative mindset and consequently decrease your happiness and your joy in this life. So we have a four-step mindset process. Would you like me to talk about that?
I would, but in just a minute, because I have another question for you. You mentioned something just a little bit earlier that really brought my interest, and that's trauma. How much impact on our health and well-being and on chronic fatigue is childhood trauma
It's huge.
or adult trauma for that matter?
Yeah, so there was a study done a number of years ago on ACEs, ACES, so adverse childhood events or adverse life events, because it can happen at any point. And oftentimes these are trauma with a big T. So this is significant abuse. This is living with somebody with substance abuse. This is emotional, sexual abuse, physical abuse, those things. And people who have those, the more of those you have, the more likely you are to have a chronic illness. I believe that the stats are if you have a certain number of those, then you're 10 times more likely to have a chronic illness. Now, there's a lot of small t trauma as well. And so these are things kind of like I experienced where I grew up with a loving family, but yet there were still things in terms of my relationships with my parents where I had to hustle for my worthiness and had other challenges that changed the way that I looked at the world and potentially made the world appear to be less safe. So, the more stress that you have in terms of your relationship with how you view the world, consequently, that increases your overall stress and leads to some of these chronic diseases, whether you have a small t or a big T for trauma.
So, um, am I to understand that some of the things that you do in your program actually give people tools to move beyond that? I mean, this is a big problem.
Absolutely. We have two trauma coaches in our program, and they have three group calls per month, and then also one-on-ones in order to coach people appropriately through this process.
That's pretty much amazing because how many people don't have trauma at this point?
Right.
It's just been a tough few years here, and I think increasingly we're all dealing with PTSD.
Absolutely.
Even if we don't know it. What are some of the signs that that's what you're dealing with?
So it's really living in a state where your thoughts feel like they're not your own. Oftentimes I will feel worried and I wonder why I'm feeling worried in that particular moment. And a lot of it has to do with the worry of the world and the global consciousness and the stress that humans are under. We are all interconnected, and consequently we can feel the emotions of the other, and we need to, so if you're like, I don't know why I'm experiencing this emotion, we have to think that is part of that, and that's kind of where the mindset work and the emotional work comes into play, and practices that you can do on a daily basis in order to reset yourself and move forward in a positive way.
So it looks like you're dealing with a double-edged sword. If you're disconnected from yourself, you aren't connected with the emotions you might be feeling or that you might be picking up. If, on the other hand, that you're fairly hypersensitive, then you're bombarded with emotions, some of which may be yours and some of which may be from the society at large. How can you start to tell the difference? What's the first step there?
So it's practice and it's noticing, and that's really the best way, and then being able to, my wife actually said to me this morning where she said, I'm thinking about this really positive thing that's going to happen in my life and I'm still anxious. And she's working on removing some last of some infections and some toxins that she has in her body, and so she said, this is how I know that these thoughts are not my own, that this anxiety is not necessarily my own, because I know that if I think about this positive thing that's happening in my life, that I can swim in that beautiful emotion, in that joy, but yet I'm not able to at this moment.
So we have to just assume that we're in a current or in a riptide of everything that's going on in the world and try to find our center to pull us back into balance.
Yes, and that's kind of where meditation or a mindfulness practice comes into play.
Let's move on to diet a little bit. You are what you eat, right?
Mhm.
So, how much does diet play with chronic fatigue? And if so, how? How does it play in there?
So it depends on the individual. There may be people who are watching this and listening to it where they remove gluten and they're going to be 100% better. Or they remove gluten, dairy, and sugar and they're going to be 100% better. So it really depends on the number of causes that somebody has and the severity of those causes. So if they have heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections, diet's going to be about 10%. So maybe it increases your energy a little bit, or maybe you don't have as many crashes during the day. But you have to address all of the different causes. And when we get into that, there's 30 some odd different causes. And everybody that we see who have chronic fatigue have around 20 of these causes. And this is not to tell you this to get you overwhelmed. It's to make you understand that you just have to go after each one of these causes. So if somebody has a gluten issue, a dairy issue, and a sugar issue, remove those, and you've already removed three of the 20 some odd issues causes that they have.
But then the temptation is, if you're a driven person, to take that extra energy and put it into your work. So you have to be careful, don't you, to not gain energy only to squander it?
Absolutely. And that's where the pacing or the energy management comes into play, where you have to realize, okay, now I can get more done, but I can't waste that energy. I can't dump all those marbles out on the table because now's the day that I want to clean the entire house top to bottom for the next 8 hours.
So when a person is dealing with dietary issues, are we also? Do you think we're being impacted by the pollutants in our food, like the GMOs or the pesticides or that sort of thing?
Absolutely. That's a big problem that we see. And that's why chemicals and heavy metals are on the toxin list. We get these toxins in many different ways, whether it's on our food, whether it's in our water, whether it's in our air. And consequently, all of these different chemicals are going to damage our DNA, which can change DNA. It can lead to immune system dysfunction. It can lead to potentially cancers. It can damage our mitochondria, which produces 70 to 90% of our energy. Consequently, our energy can go down. It's very common, especially for people who were farmers or grew up on farms, who remember running behind those trucks with the smoke that was billowing out of it, right? What was that? They were spraying pesticides, and you were just breathing it in.
And the kids used to go out and dance in that. I remember my former mother-in-law said that when they were kids, the crop dusters would come over and they made a big game out of going out and dancing in it. It was like DDT.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And it sounds like a death sentence. So we have just a little bit of time left in this part of the segment, but it sounds like a death sentence. But is there a way to reverse it?
Absolutely. So I've got a four-step process that we can get into after the break, but we need to make sure that we're opening up our drainage pathways, and we can bind up and we can remove these toxins. Absolutely.
Well, that's the good news. So I really look forward to talking about that on the other side of a station break. Dr. Hirsch and I will be right back to continue this fascinating discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Hi, this is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're bringing you the latest information to assist your evolutionary process. With us discussing possible solutions to chronic fatigue is Dr. Evan H. Hirsch. His website, energyforleaders.com. We were starting to get into ways that, we were talking about the DDT and all these horrible things, that, heavy metals that sound like a death sentence, and they used to be for sure, I would expect. What can we do now? Is there a way to remove them from the body?
Absolutely. And it's always a two-step process. You need to remove them from your environment, and then you need to remove them from the body. And so in the environment, it means consuming organic food. And we recommend as much as you possibly can. You can't always get organic, but you want to do the best that you can. It means filtering your water. It means having air filters in the home. So making sure you've got good air, good water, good food. Um, and then in terms of removing it from the body, we're using binders. So whether it's humic and fulvic acids that can bind to the different components, the different toxin components in the body, or charcoal or zeolites. We'll use a number of these things that will bind to the toxins, but we have to make sure also that the liver and the kidney and the lymph, which is the garbage system of the body, and the neural lymph, which is the garbage system in the brain, and the bile, which is what the gallbladder holds, we have to make sure that all those pathways are open so that when we go ahead and grab the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, that they actually have some place to go. But that is the way that we would approach it.
So let's talk a little bit about infections as it impacts chronic fatigue. Do many of us have infections we don't even know about, like say for instance, hidden abscess tooth, and could that be impacting what we're dealing with our energy level?
Absolutely. I would say probably 8 out of the 10 people that we work on have some sort of infection. And sometimes it's really hidden, and sometimes it's more obvious just based off of their symptoms. What you mentioned in terms of an abscess in the tooth, that's a little bit more obvious. But what's not obvious is a potential infection that's in the gum that you don't have any symptoms from. So that can definitely be causing an issue. But the chronic infections may be something like a bacteria, whether it's in the gut or any other part of the body, whether it's yeast, whether it's a stealth infection like potentially Lyme disease or some of its co-infections like Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, or maybe it's a virus like Epstein-Barr virus, HHV6, or the new pandemic virus. But infections play a huge role, and part of that has to do with the fact that sometimes we get an inoculation from a tick or a mosquito, but oftentimes we already have these infections in our bodies from mom through the placenta before we even come out into the world, or just as part of our microbiome. 90% of the cells in our body are bacteria and 10% are human cells. So there really is this symbiosis. But it's really when we get stressed, mental, emotional, or physical, when we get heavy metals, chemicals, or molds, that all of a sudden the immune system doesn't function correctly and that infections can become opportunistic and cause symptoms in the body.
How can a person tell what's first signs that, well, there's low grade fever that doesn't go away, etc. But how can a person tell that they're dealing with a hidden infection?
Well, you said it. Oftentimes, people will experience something that appears to be an infection and then the symptoms don't go away. But more times than not, they don't experience that. So they need to understand that any sort of weird symptom or different symptom or symptom that stumps the physicians that you're speaking with can be an infection. So, for example, if somebody has a Bartonella infection, which oftentimes can come from an animal, usually a pet, upwards of 50% of all domestic animals will carry Bartonella. This is the thing that causes cat scratch fever, where a cat scratches you, you can get large lymph nodes and fevers. But you can also get it from a tick or a mosquito that ends up causing this sort of chronic picture. So this would look like pain on the bottom of the feet, usually misdiagnosed as plantar fasciitis. Oftentimes there are muscle cramps, usually in the calves. Even if you get rid of it by drinking more water, taking potassium or a banana or maybe some magnesium, it still can mean that you have this infection. And then oftentimes people will have problems sleeping, either falling asleep or staying asleep. They may have some anxiety or depression. And then they also can have thyroid issues, cold hands and feet. And then sometimes they'll have a rash that looks like what's called a Bartonella striae. It looks like a stretch mark of sorts. Now, you don't have to have all those symptoms, but if you had a couple of them, there would be a strong suspicion that Bartonella may be playing a role.
So we're all probably infected to a certain degree, but until we stress our systems, it may not show up. It may not show up as chronic fatigue. Is that accurate?
Exactly. So you may have Bartonella because you've been licked in the face by a dog when you were 5 years old or something like that. But it's only when you have enough stressors that kind of build up over time where you get some heavy metals, you get some chemicals, you get some molds, and then all of a sudden the immune system cannot manage the infections the way that it needs to. Because in order to get rid of these infections, you have to have a somewhat intact immune system. Consequently, if the immune system's off in left field dealing with heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and other, whether it's psychological stressors, etc., then you need to get rid of those first in order to be able to have success at getting rid of the infections.
You made another interesting statement. You're full of them today. About 10% of us is human, and the rest is somebody else. What about the gut, the biome in the gut? There was this phase for a while where women were encouraged not to nurse their babies, and now they found, I think, is accurate that they didn't get the things in the gut that they needed as a result. How many of us have imbalances there that are playing part of chronic fatigue?
It's definitely a big role. However, most of the functional medicine practitioners that I speak to, they talk about how important the gut is, and it's absolutely important. But the challenges that people are having, whether it's SIBO, whether it's a chronic yeast issue, sometimes it has to do with the fact that they have heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and other infections that are causing some sort of gastroparesis or some sort of neuropathy of the gut,
So, like the
which,
gut will automatically counterbalance itself in a healthy environment.
exactly. Exactly. Yes. So there has to be those two parts where you're removing the toxins out of the body, but then you're also supporting the gut and you're making sure that, yes, there is the right probiotics that are there. 80% of the immune system are in the gut. And the way that the good bacteria actually gets to the breast is through crosstalk, where the bacteria in the gut speak to the immune system in the gut, and then they actually get carried to the breast and they come out in the breast milk. And so it's really important to make sure that that gut is healthy with the good bacteria.
It's a challenge of our times in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So if we're dealing with all these things, how do you prioritize? Do you do it person by person, or is there a protocol? I mean, if we jump in the middle of trying to build ourselves back up when we really need a detox, it's probably counterproductive. How do you approach all of this?
Absolutely. So we have a four-step process. And so the first step is to assess all of the causes that somebody has. We can't go in blindfolded. And like I said, we're looking at 30 some odd causes. And fortunately, 75% of those can be determined by symptoms alone. So when people join our program, they're able to immediately and within an hour, they're going to know 75% of their causes, which makes it that much more successful once you actually know the problem. You know, whether you've got an HR problem at work or you got a problem with your car, you need to know what the cause is first and foremost.
So you're looking at causes on the four levels: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Correct. Now, most of these that I'm going to mention are physical. We're looking at, and we can really break these causes up into deficiencies and toxicities. So, the deficiencies are things that are not in the body or in your life that are supposed to. Some of these are an amazing mindset, hormone deficiencies, vitamin, mineral deficiencies, whether we're looking at neurotransmitter deficiencies or lifestyle habit deficiencies, not enough good food, not enough good water, not enough movement, not enough sleep. And then the toxicities are some of what I've mentioned: heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, allergies, negative emotional patterns. So that's where we talk about the trauma and some of the spiritual issues that people have. And then electromagnetic fields. So we kind of divide those into deficiencies and toxicities.
Do you look into what and who a person is living with and working with? Say, for instance, I understand that very negative or abusive people can add to this as well.
That is a very sensitive point or a sensitive topic, where we don't tell people that they need to leave people as part of the program, but we want them to be their most fullest expression of themselves, and so that's part of some of the work that we do through our trauma coaches in the program and through the mindset work, where we're not. Yes, we talk about how that's important, where you want to make sure you're surrounded by healthy, supportive people, or supportive people. They, it doesn't matter if they're healthy or not, but supportive people. But it's not something that we tell people that they should leave people in their life.
Right, that certainly wouldn't be in your job description, would it?
Correct.
But it would be important to look at all aspects of your life and say, okay, how are my relationships, whether at work or otherwise, impacting me, and how can I mitigate that? Doesn't necessarily mean we leave people, but rather don't play into the game.
Correct. And a lot of it is actually the work that we need to do. So if we're having a challenge with somebody else, looking outside of ourselves is the antithesis of what we teach, right? We always want to look and see, okay, so if I don't feel in this particular situation, if I don't feel well, what is happening in this interaction? And where can I take agency and responsibility for what can I do? What is complete responsibility and total acceptance in this particular situation?
Hugely important. Well, it's that magic moment. It's time for another station break. You folks, please stay with us as Dr. Hirsch and I will continue to explore chronic fatigue from a new perspective. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Welcome back once again. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. your source of information and support to navigate a rapidly evolving world. This hour, our expert guest is Dr. Evan Hirsch. His website, energyforleaders.com. Dr. Hirsch, I was wanting to look at some of the things that also play in here that we could mistake for chronic fatigue, or maybe they're part of chronic fatigue. And one of them is I read not too long ago that burnout is starting to become a diagnosis as well. What's the difference between, or is there any difference between burnout and chronic fatigue?
There really isn't. Though oftentimes burnout is really more when it has to do with mental emotional fatigue. Where if you get yourself out of a particular situation or you go away on vacation and then all of a sudden your symptoms resolve. Where chronic fatigue is more you've done everything that you can from a lifestyle perspective and your symptoms still persist.
So they kind of play in together, though, I take it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of people, it really just depends on the term that they're more comfortable with. A lot of people do not identify with fatigue. They may say, I'm just tired all the time, or they may say, I feel more burnt out. And even if they're getting out of their particular situation, sometimes you can't, whether it's a marriage or whether it is a work job or something like that, where they feel stuck in a particular situation. Then you want to make sure that they can learn how to cope in that particular situation and be as successful as possible.
So you don't have to necessarily live like a monk, but rather start to prioritize where you put your energy.
And start to practice. A lot of this has to do with what are those practices that you do on a daily basis that can make you more successful in life.
Mm. That's so important, isn't it? I mean, it's like if you have a pitcher of water, and you can't remove the ink in it if you can't dump out the pitcher and start all over again. But if you pour in fresh water, pretty soon it overflows and you start running more clear. And it's the same way. If you start adding, instead of subtracting everything, if you start adding good practices, that should start to bring you some relief. Is that the theory behind it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, do people, let's talk about depression a little bit, because I know this can be so confusing. Which comes first, being depressed or being exhausted? It's really hard to tell sometimes. How can you tell depression, clinical depression even, from chronic fatigue?
Well, not everybody who has depression has fatigue, so that can be helpful sometimes. But oftentimes the causes can be the same. So, whether it's depression or whether it's fatigue, there are going to be deficiencies that need to be remedied, and there are going to be toxicities that are present that need to be removed.
So, if someone's dealing with long term depression, they could benefit from exactly the same thing that people would be doing, according to your protocol, to battle chronic fatigue.
Absolutely. And when you're looking at all of the causes that we are, we're pretty much addressing every single disease that's out there. That's why I also mentioned heart attack, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, and cancer are all the same causes. Because essentially, whatever it is that people are dealing with, whether it's thyroid, that could be caused by a deficiency in iodine. It could be caused by Bartonella infection, other infections, autoimmune disease. All of these are going to be addressed by looking at deficiencies and toxicities.
How does it relate to inflammation?
So, if you work backwards from inflammation, you look at the diagnosis or the description of inflammation, it's basically the immune system reacting to something and causing inflammation in the body. Inflammation is just the immune system saying, hey, there's a problem, and we're going to send a whole bunch of cells to this particular area. And you'll get redness and swelling and pain in a particular area. And sometimes you get a cut or you break your leg and you get all that to the particular area and it heals it up and it's gone. But when you get stuck is when you get chronic inflammation, where basically that on switch is stuck in the on position, or that light switch is stuck in the on position. And so the question is, well, what is causing that immune system to be reactive and causing that chronic inflammation? And that's all the toxicities. That's heavy metals and chemicals and molds and infections and allergies and negative emotional patterns and electromagnetic fields. All of those things will trigger the immune system to become inflammatory in the body and cause the symptoms that people are experiencing.
And how many, if would you list a few, of the illnesses that we're faced with are actually from chronic inflammation or related to chronic inflammation?
All of them.
pretty
So it's
telling, isn't it?
absolutely, yeah. So, and what ends up causing, these I talked about deficiencies and toxicities. 80% of these deficiencies are caused by the toxicities that are present. So when you have inflammation, it's going to be exacerbated by the fact that you can't produce enough cortisol, which is the body's main anti-inflammatory, can't produce it from the adrenals because the adrenal gland is responsible for mitigating stress and it's dealing with the stress from all these toxins. So it can't decrease the inflammation as it normally would.
And for clarity, we're talking about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual toxins.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, pretty amazing. So it's very complex, isn't it, trying to unravel this mystery for each person?
It is, but when you go through a step-by-step process and you start off with figuring out which causes an individual has, because everybody's going to have different causes, and everybody's going to have a combination of 20 plus causes per se, then you're going to be a lot more successful. And it's just baby steps at that point. Whether it takes 6 months or 36 months, you're going to get to where you want to be, and you're going to be able to have the rest of your life to enjoy that great energy and great health.
Now, there's a carrot for you. So, Dr. Hirsch, what are the three levels of fatigue?
So these different levels really have to do with how your energy can be fixed. So for example, if you have the first level, if you fix your lifestyle habits where you start drinking more water, you start eating more good food, avoiding the foods you're not supposed to, start getting more movement and getting more sleep, and your energy goes away, that's a level 1 problem. If you have a level 2 problem, it means that you've done the lifestyle habits, still not feeling well, but then you replace some of the deficiencies, whether it's hormones, nutrients, etc., and your energy improves, your fatigue goes away. That's a level 2 problem. A level 3 problem is if you do 1 and 2 and you still don't feel well, it means that you have toxicities that are present that need to be removed.
That's a nice organized way of looking at it. It makes it doable. Instead of feeling so overwhelmed when you're looking at it. It's about that time in the show, Dr. Hirsch, when I have to ask you, what is your mission?
So my mission is to help a million people increase their energy so that they can have more fun and success in every aspect of their lives.
Now, that's a worthy mission. If we, how can we tell? So now that people have listened to this, how can they tell? Okay, indeed, I am dealing with chronic fatigue.
So the best way to know is whether or not you have a tiredness that's not relieved by rest. So basically, if you take a week off and you were to sleep a whole bunch as much as you possibly could, and you were still tired, I mean, what did we do when we came home from finals when we were in college, right? We were burning the candle at both ends, maybe partying a little bit, studying a whole bunch, and then we would come home and would crash out for about a month. Well, if you do that now as an adult, take a month off. I mean, most of us can't do that, but the reality is that if you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night and you're still tired during the day and you're surviving on caffeine, there's a problem. If you have a problem sleeping during the night and you're tired during the day, there's a problem. You just have to listen to your body and reach out and get help from a mentor you trust.
We talked about listening to our body, and it seems to be the major theme here. What's the first step a person can take to start becoming more body aware?
So I recommend a noticing practice. It doesn't have to be meditation, but it's just paying attention to the sensations in your body and perhaps doing a body scan where you start off at the top of the head and just kind of think and feel like, what does that my head feel like? And what do my ears feel like? And my eyes and my nose and my mouth, and just kind of work your way down your body and see if you have any sort of areas of discomfort and just notice it. There's nothing to do. You're just paying attention to the different sensations in your body.
So, what is your vision for the future treatment of chronic fatigue? How do you see this fitting in with the mainstream medicine?
So I think that one of the things that I'm really excited about actually is data tracking. And one of the things that we're starting to incorporate into our program with a couple of new software that we're looking at is to have sort of reminders that go out every single day, reminding people to do their practices. To have people documenting what's happening from day to day so that we can help them adjust more. So I feel like it's this combination of the emotional and the spiritual and the mental component combined with the data in order to be able to help people move forward in a really powerful way, because humans love data and they really like to be able to see the changes. And so they can see, okay, by doing this particular practice, which I'm not really sure about, if people are not sure about doing a mindset practice, have them do it, and document every single day, what is their energy level? How are they feeling about their day? What does their practice look like? So that we can kind of combine this in order to be able to help people along the way. But I definitely see the vision in the future is being able to get people the support that they need at the moment that they need it. So that's why in our program we have daily questions that are answered guaranteed within 48 hours in our online community, not on Facebook. And then we also have face to face, a lot of face to face time with me and our other coaches to get people supported along the way.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Dr. Hirsch, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Our guest this hour has been Dr. Evan Hirsch, a world renowned energy expert, best selling author, professional speaker, and creator of the EnergyMD Method. His website, energyforleaders.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit missionevolution.org. Please join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to our evolving world.